Fox News alert. Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney and fixer, has struck a plea deal, according to ABC News. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino, and this is the Daily Briefing. ABC reporting that former Trump attorney Michael Cohen has reached a plea deal with federal prosecutors. Rick Leventhal is live now with me here with any details that we have, Rick.
Well, Dan, we've been hearing about rumors about this deal in the works for the last couple of days now, and apparently, according to ABC at least, they have now struck a deal, federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, with Michael Cohen, the president's former personal attorney, to plead guilty to criminal charges. We don't know exactly what he's pleading guilty to or how much time he's agreeing to serve in exchange for that guilty plea. We know that he was facing multiple possible charges for bank fraud and tax fraud and campaign finance violations. Tax fraud could be the key here. It's often used by the feds to win convictions or coerce testimony in exchange for leniency. And that's the other big question here, Dana, is will he, as part of this deal, agree to testify against the president or give information to prosecutors about the president that they could use as part of the Mueller investigation? We just don't know that part of it yet, but we're hearing that there's a possibility that this guilty plea has nothing to do with the Mueller probe.
Right. And so I just forgive me for reading off of my phone, but I got an email from a source saying that this is a former federal prosecutor saying, if the rumors are true that he's cooperating and signing a plea, I don't understand how the scope of Mueller's investigation has any limits. They farmed his case to their friends in that Southern District of New York, and suddenly he's cooperating in the Mueller probe. Now, we don't know if he's actually cooperating with the Mueller probe. The plea deal could maybe have nothing to do with that. Maybe it's for something else. We know that, as you pointed out yesterday, the taxi medallions was certainly an issue.
Well, he secured a lot of loans, $20 million worth of loans, using 32 taxi medallions as collateral. At the time, the medallions were said to be worth more than $1 million each, and were earning him more than $1 million each a year in income, or at least to his companies and his family and whoever else was involved in the ownership of those medallions. So he gets this loan, and then the question is, how is he using the money for the loans? Did he misrepresent his assets to secure the loans? And then how did he report the income?
Right.
And that could bring in the tax fraud allegations, which could then lead to potential cooperation with investigators.
And as far as we know, the taxi medallion issue had nothing to do with the Trump organization.
Correct.
That was separate and apart.
But as you know, this man worked with the president for a decade, knows him very, very well.
Taped conversations that he had with the
conversations, and those tapes have come up already. Mayor Rudy Giuliani, now working with the president, authorized the release of one of those tapes, and said that it doesn't implicate the president in any negative way. So maybe Mueller already has all the information he needs, doesn't need anything Cohen for that.
Cut him
but
loose.
Cohen wants to avoid a possible trial here and potentially more prison time, so he agreed, we believe, to something.
Well, this news literally breaking in the last 15 minutes. So we'll say goodbye to you now, but we'll keep you on standby just in case within the hour something more comes. Thank you, Rick.
We'll keep an eye on it.
All right, more on this now with Brett Baer, anchor of Special Report. Brett, this breaking news coming just a month after George Stephanopoulos at ABC News had interviewed Michael Cohen after it was revealed that he had taped the president. And if you remember, going back to when Michael Cohen first had that raid, the FBI raid, remember they knock on the door? Michael Cohen said it was polite, but they had a tip that perhaps evidence was going to be destroyed, and that's what led to them heading in there and getting those documents and tapes.
Yeah, that was back in April. And remember the progression we've seen since then of how this case was passed from Mueller to the Southern District of New York. And now we believe that there is some kind of plea deal. But I think the conversation that you just had with Rick is really crucial, because whether he's a cooperating witness for Mueller is something that we don't really know. This could be a plea deal on the charges tied to bank and tax fraud. He obviously is a key figure in the Trump universe. He was in the inner circle for more than a decade. He said at one point he would take a bullet for President Trump, then candidate Trump. And I think that there is, a fair amount of worry inside Trump world about where Michael Cohen could go and what he could say. But we, at this point, don't know that that's where this is headed.
While you were speaking, we did get a note from our own Fox News, John Roberts. He said that Fox News has learned that Michael Cohen is striking some sort of deal with SDNY prosecutors. It is either some kind of plea bargain or a straight-out guilty plea. We aren't clear on which yet. Sources tell Fox News that things have been moving and changing rapidly on this, and we should have clarity in about an hour. Based on experience, Brett, we not only clarity perhaps from the Trump, from the White House for whatever they know, but it could be that the prosecutors will put out a statement soon, so we'll have more clarity. Is that what you expect? Probably this afternoon?
Definitely. By this afternoon, we'll probably get a lot more granularity on what we're looking at here. You know, there's a lot of moving parts. Remember that we're still waiting for the Paul Manafort jury to come back. That, again, is separate, dealing with bank and tax fraud, not the Trump universe as per se in that case. But you have that happening. You have the Michael Cohen situation here. And there is a sense that things are moving quicker down a road that could be leading to some kind of report prior to the midterms by Mueller.
Yes, in fact, I just saw that Michael Flynn's sentencing hearing has been postponed yet again. But also George Papadopoulos, one of those, depending on who you ask, but a pretty minor player in the Trump campaign, that that the Mueller team wants to speed up his sentencing. They're ready to go with him. So speeding up on one, slowing down on another, a possible guilty plea on something separate here with Cohen. It's hard for us to read the tea leaves because we don't have all the details in front of us. But you remember, everyone's been pushing this September 1st date as the one where people feel like it should wrap up by then. We don't know if that's the case, but if it's August 21st and things are moving more quickly, maybe that will happen.
That's right. The Michael Flynn situation is, you can read it two different ways there, too. I mean, it's often the case that sentencing sometimes gets pushed off. There are some people in the legal community who look at that and say, well, maybe some new information came to light and he's cooperating fuller in a more fulsome way, and that they are deciding to change what they're thinking about for Michael Flynn. We don't know. But what we do know on the Papadopoulos sentencing is that in the Mueller documents, he comes off as not a big figure at all. And for all the folks that thought he was wearing a wire or something like that, boy, it just doesn't seem like he's that big of a figure. And
in the meantime, we've all been following today the Manafort trial every day. It's in its 17th day today. The jury sends a note to the judge today saying, what happens if we cannot come to consensus on a single count or on one count? What happens to the overall verdict? And the judge says, go back and try to get consensus on everything. So Manafort certainly on trial, and also Rick Gates, both people who had worked on the campaign, the highest levels. Rick Gates has a plea deal, and he was the star witness in that trial.
Right. Again, the Manafort trial doesn't have anything to do with his time as campaign chairman. It has to do with his finances. Interesting about that jury note today that Peter Doocy and Jake Gibson both reporting that the actual note itself said any single count or a single count, but crossed out was the word any count, meaning the note started from the jury, if we can't reach a conclusion, a verdict on any count. And then it said a single count. So we don't know where this jury is going, but clearly they're conflicted on at least one and maybe many more of the 18 counts against Paul Manafort.
Right, because it is a pretty complicated trial. And you're right to point out, of course, that this is from his lobbying days. And then, Brett, that trial will come to conclusion, we expect, this week. And then Manafort has to go and be on another trial that will be in D.C. on September 17th. So he's not completely off the hook either way.
No, far from it. And I think, in fact, the next trial has a boatload of evidence as well. And there you could start seeing some of the Trump activity as campaign chairman factor into that trial. This one, the judge actually forbade any kind of discussion about any of that.
All right, Brett Baer, thank you for being ready for the breaking news. We appreciate it.
You got it.
Peter Doocy is live.